Hello, everybody. This is Thomas here from Osnium Software. I hope everyone's doing well. Today we'll be covering the new Flex reports that were created for Arizona in this webinar and how to run them. As of right now, everyone is able to have access to the Flex reports. I'll be going over how they work, the different types of filtering you can do, the breakouts that they show you, and ultimately how to run them to get your necessary information and how they're designed. Okay. If you do have any questions, you can go ahead. There is a questions pane if you're not able to speak into the webinar, and I'll go ahead and answer those as they come in, and then we can go ahead and keep moving forward with the training. Okay.
Muted.
Okay, so when you've already imported the Flex reports, it will be in the report repository section within the database. I can go from the main menu. When I go into my reporting repository here, there'll be a category called Flex reports. Okay, so this is the category here. There are 14 of them. There is a Flex report for each module or tab ultimately within the database. Okay, so if I expand my report repository here with the Flex reports, there's a call, financial assistance, programs. There are 2 programs reports, which I'll explain the purpose for those. There's a referral, release of information services, everything that's under staff activities, survey, and victimization. So there's one for each module within the database. The Flex reports are designed consistently with the parameters and how they look and feel. The only stuff that will differ is obviously the information that you're running on, if you're running a services or if you're running a programs or financial report. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start off with the services Flex report. This is most likely going to be the one that's commonly used throughout the use of the database, just to get most of your numbers when it comes to getting clients served. There are some improvements within the Flex reports that hopefully address some of the issues that were within the normal generic reports and or limitations. So currently, when I'm going to go ahead and do the services Flex report, I can double click on the report. Okay. And then the first thing I want to do is I'm going to take my left-hand slider and slide that over a bit just to make sure I can see all my parameters. Okay. So from here, just before I even start to run the report, we have all the parameters on the left-hand side. There are more parameters than there were originally in the generic reports. Within our Flex reports, we go ahead and put in everything that's a drop-down or a checkbox on a client's profile, or whether it's on the actual service record or the referral record that you're running on. We want to make it accessible as a parameter. So at that point, you can filter by ultimately anything that's on the screen. The only limitation is we don't do parameters or filters for free text fields, as those ones will not be consistent when you need to run a report, and you can't actually report off of those free text fields. But anything that's a dropdown or a checkbox or a select all that apply will be a parameter that you can run on, and then also it will also show up in the report. Okay, so to explain the parameters, they do each have a section header, so you understand what the parameters are for. So every report at the very top left-hand corner will have the date parameters. Now the date parameters originally in the original reports, we just had a start date and an end date. We added in the blackout date within the Flex report, so this will help you get your numbers for anyone that you need to differentiate between your new clients and your returning or continuing clients. So there's a function between the blackout date and how that works, so I'll explain that once we get to that part of the report. Below that, we have report parameters. So these are just some generic report parameters that are just applied to the report. They're not necessarily on the module themselves, but they're also consistent. So stuff like new and returning, whether you want to filter by program type, just adults versus children, if you want a particular age band, so there's generic report parameters. Okay. Now, because I am running a services flex report, below that I have my service parameters here. So anything that was on your service screen is going to be a parameter. So we have the non-residential service checkbox. So that's this parameter here. Staff member, service category, service, contract, service location, method of contact, and then the other two checkboxes for distributed survey space not available. Okay. Now, the service parameters, the order that they come in is usually the order that they are on the actual screen. Because of data entry and flow, it stays the same in the parameters as well, or very close to. Okay. So because of service report, I have service parameters here on the left-hand side. If I scroll down a little bit further, now every client should have a main victimization associated to their profile. So then we have main victimization parameters. So we have the victimization type that you can filter by, and if you want to filter by the primary abuser's relationship as well. Okay. So main victimization parameters will be on every single report that also has that is based off of clients. And then because we have clients, we have the client parameters below. These will also be consistent in all the Flex reports as well. So main victimization and client parameters will be consistent whichever Flex report you decide to run. The difference between the client parameters and usually the parameters of the report that you're running, whether it's services or referrals, is the client parameters are ordered alphabetically. So as you can see, addresses is showing up first, then gender, tribe, immigrant, all the way down to veteran. That way it makes it a little bit easier to know what you're filtering by, just because there's so many client parameters or client data elements. So those are put in alphabetical order, so it's easier to search for when you need to fill it out. Okay. So if I scroll up back to the top here, so it does look like there's a lot, but it just gives you that flexibility of being able to do whatever type of filtering combination you want by a parameter. I know some of these were not available in the generic reports. This way you have the ability to go one step further and filter by almost any type of data element on the client profile or the record you're looking to run on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to select my time frame here. So I'm going to do 1/1, so the beginning of 2018 as my blackout date. I'm also going to set my start date to be the same as my blackout date. And I'll go ahead and leave the end date as 05/31/2018. So when I hit submit, so this is the way all the reports will look like. So, and I'm going to go over each of the sections within the report. The easiest way is they actually reflect the parameters. So the order of the parameters that you see on the left-hand side, every parameter, like I mentioned, is also going to show up as an aggregate or a table on the reporting side. So they're in alignment with the left side of the parameters and the ones that are actually in the report as aggregates. So they appear in the same order. I have my report. It tells me my time frame that I'm looking at for records. So January 1st to May 31st is my time frame currently. And then it gives me a little bit of a raw breakout here. So I have my date, client with the client ID, just in case there's two people potentially with the same first and last name. We have the service category, the service that was provided, the duration and hours, and then whether it was a non-residential service. That's a checkbox that's on the service record there. So this will be my raw data dump of everything or all the records that are going to be showing up in my report. Okay, they are ordered by date. So if I scroll down, these are all the services. And at the bottom, it gives me a little bit of a total. So I can see my total number of services here is 38. The number of clients that show up in this report is 10. And the total hours is 32.75. Now this table may get large. So you are able to hide the details, which is that top left-hand corner there with the hide details button. And that will allow you to collapse that table so you just have the header and then the total of at the very bottom. Okay. So if you need to save on the amount of pages, you can go ahead and collapse that. So the first thing we get are the report details, similar to report parameters. So I have my new and returning. Currently, everyone in this report is new. To give you an idea of why they're new so far until I get into a further explanation is that my blackout date and my start date are the same. So everyone's going to be considered new. So I have 10 clients. They're all adults in this case, and that's defined by their actual age. So as you can see, we have breakout of some age banding. So our numbers between 18 to 24, up to 60 plus. So we have the aggregates on the right-hand side with a grand total row at the very bottom. Okay. So because when they receive services, they need to be enrolled in a program within the database. So we're also pulling in information regarding the programs. So I have emergency shelter, motel, non-residential as associated programs. Whenever you see something that says no data and then the numerical value beside it, that means it's blank, or there are services that are not enrolled, services that are provided to someone who's not currently in a program. Okay. So anytime you see no data, it's usually that the field is left blank or empty. So after the report details, we get to the service details. Okay. So from here, what we can see is we have our service categories, which also drive the service name. So the first thing we give out is a breakout of the service category. So what we have here is we have the battery intervention services, children youth services. All our service categories are here. And then to the right, we give 3 sections of data. So the first one is for the number of contacts. Contacts is how much times you provided that service or service under that category. So if I look at criminal civil justice system assistance as an example, and I'll highlight that. Okay, so I can see I provided 10 services that fell under that category to 7 unique clients. So that's my unduplicated count. And then my total number of hours is 9.25. Okay, so this is something that was newly developed within the Flex reports to give you that breakout of contacts, clients, and hours. From here, if I scroll down, so now what we have here is these are what we call our pivot grids. And we're able to do a lot of different functionality with the type of rows and columns that we show. So because services are driven by a category, we got our breakout of the categories earlier. Now we're getting a breakout of the services. Now because services are tied to a category, we have a column that shows you the category. And then the next column to the right of that is the actual service under that category. So we're getting a little bit more detailed information. So I'll again focus on the criminal justice system assistance example. So I'm going to highlight this one here. Okay. So over here we can see the actual category and then the following 5 options to the right of the actual service name that was provided. And then we get again our number of contacts, clients, and hours. So 3311. So these ones are all coincidentally the same. As you can see at the very bottom, we get our totals of 10, 7, 9.25, which was earlier for that category. Okay, so that 10, 7, and 9.25 is broken down even further into more granular information right here for each specific service name. Okay. So that's a big improvement in the Flex report that we're able to do these kind of tables to show you this type of data. Earlier in the original generic reports that we used to do, that function was a limitation. And then you'd have to run the report potentially multiple times to get your unique client numbers or your total service numbers. Whereas in this case, me, without even doing any filtering, I can get all of a sudden my number of contacts, clients, and hours for each category and service. So if I keep scrolling down, the rest of the information here is going to be more or less with a single total on the right-hand side, not necessarily clients, contacts, and hours. But then we get everything, all the other data elements that was on a service record. So we have contract. Okay, so once again, no data means I have 35 records that don't have a contract value, meaning the dropdown was left blank or empty. And 3 of them had a VOCA contract or a placeholder in this case. If I scroll down, I can see of those 38 services, the method of contacts, the service location, service level. Again, because service level also drives the reason in this case, they're broken down into 2 columns. So if someone was not served and then there was a reason filled out, I can see not served and the reason was mental health, or partially served and no show. Now this is an example database, so that may not be correct in the example. But just to show you what it does is you can have the service level type and then you can have the reasons showed up beside. Okay. So then we also have session topics. So session topics is a check all that apply that's on a service. So again, we'll break down the session topics and then we'll provide the number of contacts and then unique clients that received that session topic. And if I keep going a little further, then I get down to staff members, so I can see all the staff that provided a service, all the ones that were non-residential, how many were distributor survey, whether there was space not available. So all the totals, everything that you would get on a service record will get total up here as well. Now this is pretty consistent with what was also in the generic reports, is just it's a different visual structure with the tables and the headings. So now that we did the report details, we went over and we got all the aggregates of the service information. All those totals were 38 because there was a total of 38 services provided. Now there were 10 clients, okay? So the main victimization information is based off of the clients, from the client's profile. So that's why our numbers are 10. Now for each service, so I can see in this information, I can see the victimization type of the clients that were served. So of the 38 services I provided to the 10 unique clients, okay, I can see that under DV adult physical assault, there were 2 clients that fell under that category, 3 that fell under domestic and or family violence, 2, 1, etc., totaling 10. Again, I have 2 that says no data, means 2 clients, at least in this report, and for this time frame, do not have a main victimization on their profile. So we can break it out by the main victimization information. And then there's also a table for the main victimization of the relationship. Okay. So then going down a level further, now we're getting down to the client details. Okay. So as you can see, it's consistent with kind of what I mentioned with the parameters. So now we're on the client details here. Now, the first thing we break out is the age. So we did have age bands earlier just as generic within the report. But then if you have different reports that utilize different age band categories or ranges, you can go ahead and you look at the raw data of all the individual age breakouts. Okay, so then you'll get everything that shows up in the report. So I have one that was 24, one that was 28. So this way you can even see what were the ages of the 60 plus, or how many you had between 18 and 24, and specifically what they were. Okay. So we get the raw data of the ages. Again, everything is going to be totaling now to 10 because we're getting client details. Okay. So then we get our address information. So just to keep everything grouped together, it's prefixed by address. So then we have the city, the country, county, state, and the zip code. Okay. And then anything else that was on the client profile is going to be put into the tables below as well. So just skimming through this really quickly here. So employment status, you'll get your aggregates, gender, highest education completed, Hispanic, Latino, Latina. Again, and this is all done in alphabetical order. So if I know I'm looking for race, it will be lower down in the report. So if I scroll back to the top, that's the entire structure of the report, similar to the way this structure of the parameters on the left-hand side. So to give an idea of when we're going to be running this report, I know a lot of reports usually ask for new and continuing or returning clients. So I'm going to go ahead and explain how that section works and show you how some of the filters work, and then also differentiation between the data, if you need to differentiate between just new or returning clients. So if we take our attention to the top left-hand corner where the date parameters, there's 3 dates. So there's a start date, end date, and then we have the new date field, which is the blackout date. The blackout date is the one that's going to help in determining the numbers for those who are continuing and or new clients. Okay, or sorry, new and returning. So like I mentioned earlier, my start date and my blackout date are the same, so everyone is going to be considered new in the report. What the blackout date does is if I change now my date field to February of my start time frame of February 1st. So what's happening here is my reporting period that I'm looking at is always my start and end date. That's the time frame that I'm looking at. So right now I'm looking to get services between February 1st and May 31st. That's my reporting time frame. Okay. Because the blackout date is before my start date, it's going back to the beginning of the calendar year, which is January 1st of 2018. So now I have another range between my blackout date and my start date. So I have a time frame of between January 1st, okay, and then February, it would be 2029, depending on the leap year. Okay, so I have a blackout time frame, and then I have actual start and end date. Okay, so if they received a service between March 1st and May 31st, and they have also received a service between my blackout date and my start date, so that would be between January 1st and the end of February, they will be considered a returning client, meaning I served them in my actual reporting period, and I also they received a service previous to my reporting period. Okay. Now, if they received a service between my start and end date, but they haven't received any services up to my blackout date, then they'll be a new client, meaning I've served them in my actual start and end date or my reporting period, but I haven't served them prior to January 1st of 2018, or all the way up to January 1st of 2018. Okay, so if I hit submit right now, we have 10 clients. Okay, so we're down to 9 clients. Okay, so we're down to 9 because there's only 9 that were served between March 1st and May 31st. Okay. Now, from those 9 clients, and I have 27 services, I can see 4 of my clients are new, 5 of my clients are returning. Okay, so that means 4 of my clients haven't received a service prior to March 1st, but no later than the beginning of the year. Okay, and then 5 of them are returning, meaning they received a service between March and May 31st, and they've also received a service prior to March, okay, or my previous reporting period. So that's how the blackout date, start and end date, you can play around with those dates to get your new and returning numbers. Okay. So now what I can do from here is sometimes you just need to get demographics of just new clients. Okay. Now if I scroll down, I have my total number of clients that are new is 4. Okay, so if I go down to my client information, okay, my totals are still 9 because I'm just showing you 4 new clients and 5 returning. But the demographics are that's the status of those clients. Okay, I still have 9 clients in the report. So if I want to see the demographics of just my new clients, okay, what I can do is go to my left-hand side, and under my report parameters, I can select I just want to see new clients. Okay, so if I click on that and I go ahead and hit submit, okay, so now my total is down to 4 clients, 14 services. And now this entire report is showing me services and client demographic information of the new clients that I served. So if I go down to my client details, now my totals are totaling up to 4, which is just the new clients. Okay. So if I scroll back up, vice versa, if I want to see returning clients, I'll go ahead and change that to returning, hit submit, and now my number is 5, like we saw previously for the 5 returning clients. If I want to not put a filter or remove my new returning filter, I'm just going to put in the option no filtering. So I don't want any filtering regarding new or returning. I'll hit submit, and then I'm back to my 9 clients. Okay, so then we have the same idea for adult and child. Okay, so we want to see just adults or just children. And if you want to see a particular age band. Okay. So the other thing that we have is program type. Okay, so program type, if I click on the 3 dots here, I can see services that were provided under a particular program. Okay. So for example, I have emergency shelter, motel, non-residential, transitional housing, etc. So if I want to see services that were provided within my emergency shelter program, I can select that as an option here. Click OK. I can go ahead and hit submit. I'll show the details in this case. Okay. So 3 clients and 6 services that fall under the emergency shelter program. Okay, so as you can see, if I clear this and I hit submit, okay, the following programs are here: no data, emergency shelter, motel, non-residential. So emergency shelter only has 6. So if I go ahead and select emergency shelter, okay, now I'm just getting all the services under emergency shelter and all the demographics and the client information as well. Okay, so that's me doing a single filter. Okay, now if I want to go ahead and do more than one option, I can hold down the control key and then select more than one option. So if I want to see maybe everything within emergency shelter, transitional housing, and motel, so all my residential programs, I can do a multi-select. 5 clients, 11 services. Okay. So that's how the filtering works. If you've been using the generic reports already, the idea behind the filtering and the logic with the ands and ors is the same. It's just showing you the report and how it's structured with the pivot grids and the tables is a little bit differently and gives you a lot more information, especially when it comes down to the services component. Okay. So most likely you might be running it by a particular staff member as well. So then you can click on the 3 dots, and then you could go ahead and select the staff member or staff members you'd want to get services for. Okay, so the filtering stays the same. We do have more filtering options. If you want to go into specifics, such as maybe you want just by gender or from a particular tribe, so you can go ahead and select those values here. Now, the other thing I mentioned, we do have zip code. So zip code is a field in the address. Now, this one, the way this for zip code, it is done that you can filter by zip code. Okay. So if I scroll down to zip code, so I have 85005 just as an example here. So I can actually go ahead and type 85005 and then go ahead and hit submit. Okay, and then it will filter out according to that as well. Okay. So that is the services flex report. It will be, like I said, mostly the primary report that you'd be using most often to get certain numbers. The other report that I want to cover is the programs flex report, just because there's 2 reports there, and I'm going to explain why we have 2 reports for the program. Okay. So if I go ahead and close this here, so if I look under the programs flex report, so I have a programs flex report, and then I have a programs flex report that says admission/discharge. The reason for this being is the program flex report will get anyone currently enrolled in a program in your reporting period. The program's flex report admission and discharge will give you the ability to filter people who enrolled in the program during the reporting period, or if you want to see people who left the program during the reporting period. So there's the differentiation between the two reports. Okay. So if I go ahead and we're going to go ahead and run the program's flex report. Okay, so I'll expand my slider on the left. So as you can see, consistent with the parameters on the left-hand side, we have our date parameters, we have our report parameters. Now, we don't have service parameters here because it's a status report or a programs report. So we have just the parameters under the program, so program type, location, destination, TANF, eligible, public benefits, etc. Okay, so then we have the report-specific parameters here. We still have our main victimization parameters that are tied to a client, and then we have the same list of client parameters as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that same time frame. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. So over here, I'm getting, again, my raw data. So I have my intake date, my client, the number of nights, their exit date, program type, location, and member. Member is the one that's going to tell you whether they are a head of household or if they are a family member, such as their son, daughter, relative, etc., who's in shelter with them. Okay. So if I scroll down, these are all my records here. I can look at my totals. I have 51 program records, 51 clients. Okay, so it's actually 1-to-1 in this case. And then I have my total number of nights. Okay, so that's just a sum. Now I'm running it for a big time frame, so that's why the totals are so big. Then we get our aggregates at the bottom. So as we can see from here, underneath the raw data, we get report details. So we're showing a few things. Again, new and returning, adult and child. But the only difference is we added in bed nights, so you can see the breakout of bed nights by adult and child. Okay. So as we can see, the 7,185 is broken down into the two following categories. So this is getting me anyone who is currently in shelter, or sorry, in a program during the reporting period. So as you can see, it varies from emergency shelter. I have one in motel. I'm also getting my non-residential programs here. I haven't done any filtering yet. So if I want to see people who are just enrolled in my non-residential program, underneath program type, I'm going to select non-residential. And I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. Okay, so now I'm just getting my non-residential clients. If I want to see specifically for a different one, if I want to do maybe just my emergency shelter program, this is anyone who is currently in emergency shelter during my reporting time frame. So structured the same like I mentioned. Under the report details, new and returning, adult and child, we have our age bands. Program type is just emergency shelter based off of my filtering on the left. I have the breakouts of the locations, destination at exit if they exited. Okay, in this case, no data may mean that they didn't exit. So then there wasn't a destination set in place. But ultimately, it was still left empty. TANF eligible, public benefits, anything that was regarding a program. Then we get, again, our main victimization information. So of the clients enrolled in the program, what their main victimization is, the relationship, and then if I go a little bit further, we'll get back to what we saw earlier, is the client details. Okay, so as you can see, the raw breakout of all the ages, and then we get, again, address, city, county, okay, everything that we had consistently before in the services flex report. Okay, so scroll back up to the top. So the reason we have an admission district, because like I mentioned, this one gets me anyone who is currently enrolled in a program within, in this case, January 1st and May 31st. Okay. If I change that to number 3, so going from March, okay, this is anyone who's currently enrolled in a program in March. Okay, they might have come into the program prior to March, or they may have left within March or April, but as long as they're in that time frame of the report, they'll show up. Okay. So what I'm going to show you now is if I close out of this one here, and if I go below to my programs flex report with admission and discharge, slide that over. I'll use my same time frame as earlier. The difference now within one of my parameter options is I have to select an option to report by. So which one do I want to do? I want to run the report based off of admission date, or do I want to run the report off of discharge date? So some of the places in the report, in the modules within the database, there may be more than one date, such as protection orders as well. It might have a date requested, date denied. Those reports will have a date filter, so you can select which date you want to run based off of your time frame. So if I do my admission date, this is going to get me anyone who was admitted into a program within January 1st and May 31st. Okay, so if I hit submit, this is anyone who had an intake date within my time frame. So this will be people who are currently enrolled. So sometimes you might want to see people that enrolled, how many people enrolled into a program last month. You would run this report and run it by admission date. Okay, if I want to see how many people exited a program and what program and the total number of people for that one, I would change my date filter to be the discharge date, and I'll hit submit. And now if I look at my exit dates, I can see these people exited March, April, and May. Okay, so as you can see, I'm using the same time frame that I did previously, but the numbers are significantly lower because I'm just looking either at admission date and discharge date has to be within my time frame. The other report just checks if they were currently enrolled at any moment currently in a program during my time frame. Okay, and again, everything on the left-hand side is consistent, main victimization, client parameters, etc. Okay, so I close out of this one here. The other one I want to talk about a little bit is the calls. Okay, so the call flex report. So I'm just going to focus on a few things here to know about this report. So if I go ahead and change my time frame, again, I'll go back to the beginning of the year. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. So I'm getting all my hotline calls within that time frame of January 1st and May 31st. Now, what we can see here, if you look at the table here, we have a column here called type of person. Okay, so type of person has 3 options. And if you take a look to the left-hand side, I'll show you all the options here on the left-hand side in the parameters. So they can either be an existing client, and then in parentheses, we mention what defines it to be that type of person. So existing client means they're already in the database. So on a call record, there's a drop-down for existing client. If that's filled in on the call, you know that call was done from an existing client. If there's no first name and no last name filled in, they're going to be anonymous. So those 2 fields are left blank. So as you can see under anonymous, it's no name. Okay, so no first name, no last name. If they're not an existing client, but they did put in a first name and or a last name, they'll be defined as a caller. So there's 3 different categories that they fall into, which is existing clients, if they're in the database, anonymous if there's nothing filled in with the first or last name. But if there was something filled in and they're not an existing client, they will be, the type of person they will be in this report will be a caller. Okay, so that's the only thing I want to focus within this report that's a little bit different and new. Okay. Filtering stays the same. Everything that was on a call is also there as a filter and will be shown in the report as well. The only thing is there's some calculations that are done within the calls section. So as you can see, calls are 9. I have 9 calls that came in. We give a little bit of breakout if you want to know by days of the week. Now they're not necessarily in the order of the week, but they show you for each day. We have the type of person. We have the call taken by. Now, remember, our number of calls was 9. So if I look at my demographic information, depending on what you collect within demographics, sometimes agencies collect quite a bit over the phone, sometimes they don't collect a lot of information. But all our demographic information is going to be calculated and totaled to 9. Okay. Now, what's happening here is in the database, if they're an existing client, it's going to pull the information from their profile, not what is on the call record. Okay, so on a call record, we do have demographic information as well. If an existing client is going to use the one that was taken on their profile. Okay, if they're not an existing client and they have something filled out, whether it's race or gender, we'll take it from the call record. Okay, so these will always total up to 9. Okay, and then address as well, and then age works the same way for the demographic component. Okay. So that's the call report there. And then the last one I want to focus on is under staff activities under the outreach report. Okay. So for the outreach report, I'll use my same time frame, beginning of the year. I'll hit submit. So again, we have our details at the very top. We have all the staff members showing up in the raw data for each event here. We have our outreach types. And then if I scroll down to my audience types, just to explain how this section works, again, because we have 2 columns here, I can see under my audience types under the category of community education, I can see the totals for community education and the audience types. Okay, so then under education, I can see there was 20 middle and high school students. Under product and material, okay, I can get my totals here. So it's 100 brochures, 20 promotional products totaling 120, and then everything in total is 517. Now, if you'd want to remove product and materials from your totals here, in the audience type, you would just not count product and materials. You would select everything else but those, just to omit them, or you can subtract the numbers. Okay, so that's the only thing I want to show here, again, with this style of multiple columns in a grid, totals, and then also subtotals within the actual pivot grids as well. Okay. So that should be, the Flex report should be readily available for you to go ahead and import into the database. If you do need any assistance importing them into the database, our support team can definitely help you out if you email them at support@osnium.com. Otherwise, that is the basic outline of the new Flex reports and their styles, how they work, their structure. We have about 10 minutes left, so I can go ahead and open up if there's any quick questions and answer period. If anyone wants any clarification on something or any general thoughts or feedback. So you go ahead and utilize the questions pane to go ahead and input your question, or if you want to speak into the webinar, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and then I can go ahead and unmute you if you wish.
Muted.
Okay, so that completes the Flex Report webinar. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. If you need any assistance, again, getting them imported into the database, you can email support@osnium.com, and then they will be able to guide you there as well. Other than that, thank you for your time. Thank you for attending this webinar. That completes the Flex Support webinar. Have a great day.